Hi everybody, Steven here. So you're playing around with NSX and you see these tunnels and you're not quite sure to what to make of them, or you want to learn a little bit more about doing some troubleshooting on the NSX and Edge tunnels. Well, stick around. That's what I'm going to cover in this video. See you in a bit. Hi everybody, thanks for sticking around. So what we're going to do in this video, we're going to talk about the NSX tunnels, both between our compute nodes and our edge transport nodes. So basically between all our transport nodes. There is a presentation that I'm going to do. I've got a couple of PowerPoint slides just to illustrate it. We'll walk through it very slowly, and then we'll look at we'll compare what we're supposed to see with the PowerPoint, and then we'll look at my lab environment and see what we actually see. And a little warning or spoiler, there's some strange stuff going on that I'm going to kind of show you as well. Stick around till the end. I also will introduce a problem into my environment. We'll see kind of what that does and how we could kind of figure out what's going on. All right. So a little bonus troubleshooting part there. Now, if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please support the channel by subscribing to it. Totally free. Just click that subscribe button. Really easy. Without subscribers, there's no content developers, right? Also, likes are also good, sharing the videos, and I also have super thanks enabled, but totally up to you. And for those of you that already have given super thanks and subscribed, thanks so much. Really appreciate it. Let's get started. Okay, so let's get started. So in this example, I just have 3 hosts. You'll see I have host 1, host 2, and host 3. I'm doing a simple configuration, a single TEP. Again, if you're not sure what a TEP is, you got to watch my NSX playlist on what NSX is and transport nodes and all that. So I'm assuming you know this, what a TEP is. Anyways, so I've got 3 hosts in this picture just to keep it clean. I've got an edge cluster with 2 edge nodes. Again, this is just a single TEP configuration, not really a leading practice or recommended solution, but hey, let's learn how to walk before we run, okay? You'll notice I have no tunnel set up. Why is that? There's no VMs running on these hosts. There is, however, in this example here, I have an edge cluster, and they're showing me there's a tunnel set between these 2 taps. That's what that little line is. So I have actually 1 tunnel. So I was actually looking at my edges, I would see this 1 tunnel. The tunnel gets instantiated as soon as you create your edge nodes, you install them into, and you set up a cluster. And then once you put a gateway on that, let's say you put your tier 0 gateway on it, boom, at that point, each tap will have a tunnel between it. If you don't have that, then there's an issue. We got to troubleshoot it. So right now, this is what I should look like. I've got a tier 0 gateway in my environment. It's using this edge cluster, and I only got a single tap, so you'll see a tunnel between each of these taps. Remember, your taps do your encapsulation, decapsulation. You'll see these are all part of the same transport zone. And it's an overlay transport zone. I'm not showing VLAN transport zone. That's not part of this this solution, okay? Okay, so let's power on a VM on one of the hosts. So right now, I've powered on a VM on this host 1 over here. What happens there is this TEP is, now I'm not showing any segments or web tier or anything like that. I don't care what segment this is on, this VM is on. It's an overlay segment, period, okay? Now what's gonna happen is, this TEP, because it's an overlay segment, we need to be in contact with the edge cluster over here. So you'll see a tunnel being set up from this TEP to both TEPs over here. And that's kind of what I'm going to show you right now. So boom, you see I got 2 tunnels from here. So if I go into my interface, I would actually see 2 tunnels here on this node, and I would actually see 2 tunnels on each of the edge nodes as well, which makes sense. If we power on another VM on a different host, again, I don't care if I power on more VMs here, it's still going to look like this, okay? If I power on another VM on, let's say, host 2, there we go. Guess what? This tap now needs to contact the edges. Also, this tap needs to be aware of that tap as well, so they need to be able to talk to each other. So you'll see some tunnels get set up. So boom, I get a tunnel from this tap to that tap, and I get, since I got 2 taps over here on the edges, you'll see I got 2 tunnels going to the edges at that point. So in total, we see I've got 3 tunnels on each edge node, 3 tunnels on each of these transport nodes. Pretty straightforward. Let's power on a third one. So again, I'm powering on this VM on this host. Again, it's all these VMs are on overlay networks. Again, I don't care if they're on a web segment app. It doesn't make a difference here. They're on an overlay segment. Okay. At this point, this tap over here in host 3 needs to be aware of the edge taps and host 1 and host 2. So you'll actually see tunnels going from there to there and then to there. That's basically what you should see. So it's going to go boom, and we see it. So now if I look closely, I have a total of basically 4 tunnels here. And again, 4 tunnels here, 4 tunnels, 4 tunnels, and 4 tunnels. That's the easy one, okay? And that's what I should see, okay? If I start powering off VMs, if I turn off this VM here, again, the reverse can be true. Again, tunnels would basically be removed, okay? So that's basically what happens. Now, that's a simple diagram. What happens when we get into multi-TEP configuration? Most of the times, you're not going to deploy an edge node with a single tap. One of the, and I'll say it, best practice, I don't like using that term best practice. I usually like to say leading practices or recommendations from VMware is to deploy your edge nodes with multi-taps, with 2 taps. That's kind of their recommended solution. So let's take a look at what that would look like. Let's go to the next one. Come on, here we go. So here, same kind of picture. I got my 3 nodes. They're a single tap on each one. But my edge nodes now have multi-taps, okay? So you'll see that there's 2 taps here. And how do we configure that, by the way? Okay, let me actually show you, let me go to my web screen here, and let's go into, where do I want to go? System. I'm going to go into nodes. Let me look at one of my taps over here. I'll come back to this one a little bit later, don't worry. Let me go into one of my nodes here, and I'm just going to go edit settings. In my lab environment right now, I've got this set up as a multi-TEP environment. And NSX has it in their design guide. They talk a little bit about it. So if you got a single NSX virtual distributed switch on your edge node, which I have here. See, I called mine NSX VDS. Not much of an imagination, but hey, makes sense. I got a single switch. And this single switch on the edge node, it's a VM, it has both overlay and VLAN traffic. Now we're just concerned about the overlay in this example. You'll see over here, my taps, I'm using IP4. I'm statically assigning them. And notice I've given them 2 IP addresses, okay? And more importantly, what I wanted to show you is the uplink profile I'm using is my edge profile. Not much of an imagination. This profile is going to dictate the number of TEPs that this edge has. This edge only has 1 NSX virtual distributed switch with 2 uplinks. So each uplink will get a tap, multi-tap. Let me cancel this. Let's look at my edge profile. Let's go into profiles. Where's my edge? Right there's my edge profile. I'm going to edit it. I'm not doing any lags or anything like that. And you'll see I've got a default teaming policy, load balance based on source. So you've got, this is basically over here, your teaming policy can fail over order. It means I can have uplink 1 being active, uplink 2 being standby. You'll get a single tap there. Or as soon as I pick load balance, whichever one, source or MAC, this is source port of the VM. At that point, as soon as you pick load balance, it's going to say, okay, I'm going to give you multiple taps. So I could use both of them. And the number of taps you're going to have is going to be based on the number of active uplinks. So I basically said load balance based on source port, and I've got 2 active uplinks here. This over here is for name teaming. Don't worry about that. It's not really to do with the conversation here. You'll see my transport VLAN is 11. This is for my my overlay is on VLAN 11. And then you'll see my MTU over here is 9,000. One thing I want to point out here, it says, note, for an NSX virtual distributed switch, which this edge has, if the field is left empty, the default MTU will be 1,700. The MTU is not applicable for vSphere distributed switches. You set it at the vSphere distributed switch. So what this is saying is this field here is for your edge nodes. You got to specify that. And if you're doing bare metal nodes, again, you got to do that. Your ESXi hosts, when you prepare them for NSX, You don't worry about this here. You do it on the distributed switch. Anyways, I kind of went off script there a little bit. Doesn't matter. But anyways, this is why I have multiple TEPs. Let me cancel this. And we'll come back and I'll actually show you some of that afterwards. So I just wanted to point that out. Let's go back to the iPad. All right, so same kind of picture here. Notice in this example, I got my 2 edge nodes. They're in a cluster. And I got them connected to my tier 0 gateway. All right. And then notice right off the bat, I've got tunnels. This TEP needs to be aware of that TEP and this TEP. Then same thing with this TEP. This TEP, let me change my color, needs to be aware of that TEP and that TEP. So you'll see in my picture here, I got 4 tunnels. And that's what I should see. Let's take a look. Let's go back to my environment here. Let me go to nodes. You'll see I've got, again, under my edge nodes, you'll see I got 4 tunnels. And if I actually look here, it'll show me, there's my TEP IPs. Now, you'll see it's 172.20.11, 181, and 191. So 181 and 191 are on edge 1. The other ones over here, 172.20.11, 192, and 182 is edge 2. So if I look here at my tunnels, you'll see, again, 181 has a tunnel to 182. 191 has a tunnel to 182. That's edge 1 to edge 2. 191 also has a tunnel to 192, and 181 also has another tunnel. There's my 4 tunnels. So basically, each TEP is talking to the other TEP on the other edge. Okay? So we see my 4 tunnels. Great. That's what we expect to see. Let me go back into here now. And let me go back to my hosts. How about that? I've got my compute cluster, so I got 3 nodes in my compute cluster. I don't have any VMs powered on right now, so you'll see the number of tunnels, not available. That's okay. Again, look at the little information box. I click on that and it'll say no tunnels will not be available in the following. No VMs are on the host are available. Yeah, VMs on host are powered off state. Host is in maintenance mode. So yeah, I got no VMs running. So this is why I got no tunnels. Let's go back to my PowerPoint. Okay, so let's start powering on some VMs. I'm going to power on the VM on the first host over here. So there we go, I power on the VM. Now this VM is going to be on this host. This host has a single TEP, so this VM is going to use that TEP for its end cap and decap. So that means this TEP has to create a tunnel between all the TEPs over here on this edge cluster. So we see we got a lot more. So it'll be 4 tunnels over here. When we look, so let's go forward. So we do that, boom, we get 4 tunnels set up over here, which I see. 1 to each of these TEPs. Now, if I look at the individual edge node, I got 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 connections. So that means each edge node has 6 tunnels set up. So let's see what happens. Let's do this in reality mode. All right. So let me go to here. So right now, if I go to NSX, let me just refresh. There's no tunnels like we see before. If I go to my edge nodes, again, we already seen the edge nodes. So let's power on the VM. I'm going to right click on this web. I'm going to power on. I got DRS set in manual mode, so I get to pick and choose my host. So we're going to put it on host 4. I'll say OK. Now, once I power it on and I go into NSX, this takes probably about a minute for it to update. I guess your mileage may vary depending on your environment, but I'm just going to click refresh. I'm going to probably just pause the recording and we'll come right back. It'll probably take about a minute. There's no point in you guys waiting. Okay, so that took about a minute to update in the interface here. You'll see there's my host 4. It's got the 4 tunnels, right? If I click on that, you'll see the source. Let me close this. This host only has a single TEP. There's its address. So there, 172.20.11.52, single TEP. So we should see connections from that .52 to my 4 TEPs on the 2 edge nodes. So we see the source over here on the left. I got 4 of them. One goes to the 181, the 182. That's edge 1 and edge 2. Another one goes to 191 and 192. That's edge 1 and edge 2. Remember, multi-TEP. There's my 4. Okay. Let me close this. Let's go to our edge nodes now. There should be 6. There we go. We got the 6 tunnels. And again, you can see there we got the 2 extra ones for that host 1 over there. Pretty simple, right? Nothing too crazy. Let's power on another one. Let's actually go back to the presentation here. So let's clear this. And let's power on up a couple more. So let's power on this one and another one over here. So we're going to power on this guy. So now this TEP joins, right? What does this guy need to do? Well, it needs to talk to those edge TEPs. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4. Great. But it also needs to talk to this TEP. There's 5. So this guy should have 5 tunnels. This guy should have 5 tunnels. These hosts should now have 8, if I remember correctly. Right? Yeah, because we got 2 extra ones. Each one should have 8. So let's power on one more. And let's go to, we'll do host 5. Let's power on web 2. Power on. Let's put it on host 5 over here. So I say OK. Again, I'm going to go back into NSX. I'm going to go in here and hit the refresh button. It's going to probably take about a minute to come up, right? Let me go to my edge node. Sometimes I find this one comes up faster. So it says there's 6 right now. Let's refresh. Notice it's that one changed to 8. This one still says 6. So we just may have to wait there we go. I find the edge nodes come up faster, right? So we see that again, it's now got a connection. There's 50. The remote is 52, and where is yeah. So we actually see that connection over here now. 191, 192, 2, 4, 6. Actually hasn't updated this yet. It shows 8 here. That's interesting. Let's refresh that, or maybe it's something with my GUI. Okay. And then let's go back to, we'll let that refresh. Let's go back to hosts over here. And let's go back to refresh this. And we see we got 5. 5 on each, host 4 and host 5. Great. That other one probably needs to refresh. Let's go back to the slideshow. Now, again, this is going to seem pretty simple, right? This is a no-brainer. Wait till we get multi-TEP. That's where it gets fun. Okay? So, again, this is what we see. Let's power on another VM on host 3. So let's power on that one. Oops, sorry. There we go. There's the tunnels that we got. Let's power on another one on host 3. So there we go. We're going to power on that VM. And again, this TEP needs to talk to the edge nodes. There's 1, 2, 3, 4. We know that already. It also needs, since these guys are in play, we also need that, and we also need that. So I'm going to have 4. I should have 6 over here. This guy should have 6, 6. And there's another 2, so this should be, what, 10? We had 8, so that should actually be 10 now on each one. Okay, so let's see what happens here. Okay, and let's power on a VM. Let's do database. I don't care about which one I do. Power on, and we're going to put it on host 6. Host 6. And then we'll just go back to NSX. Again, I'm going to refresh this. It'll probably take about a minute or so for it to update. Let's go back to nodes here. We had 8. Let's refresh this. So you see we got, oh, see, notice that 2 of them are, 8 are up, 2 are down. Let's give it a few seconds, right? That's interesting. It'd be really interesting to see if something's busted there. Maybe I just have to wait a little bit. Let's go back to hosts over here. And clusters. And let's refresh. Again, I'm going to pause the recording. This might take a few minutes or a minute or so. So we'll be right back. Okay, so we're back. And I just waited about a minute. I hit the refresh button. We see we got 6 tunnels up. Again, just like the diagram I had, if we go back to our nodes over here, and we see we got 10. Remember that said 8 up and 2 down? It's just during that transition phase, right? You just got to kind of wait, right? And it's good. If I click on the tunnels, you can see all the tunnels basically like I drew out. So if you're ever troubleshooting this, you may want to draw something out, mark down the IPs, and confirm stuff. So this was pretty simple, right? Well, suppose if we get into multi-TEP configuration. Let's go back to the presentation. Suppose if we get into multi-TEP configuration. So this is where things get fun, all right? So if you thought those were pretty easy, watch this one. So again, we still got our multi-TEP on our edge nodes, which I talked about. And that's generally what you'll probably find out there in the real world. You're going to probably have multi-TEPs on your edges. Now, when it comes to hosts, you'll probably see multi-TEP as well. Why? Because if you only got a single TEP, all your traffic's going through that single TEP, unless you're doing a lag, like link aggregation control protocol, 802.3 AD link aggregation. If you're not doing that, then you're going to be doing multi-TEP. And this allows multiple NICs, in this case it'd be 2 NICs, to handle overlay traffic. and things get a lot more fun at this point. So again, we see over here, my edge nodes actually have 4 tunnels, each edge node, because again, things are up and running, right? This edge cluster is used by my tier 0 gateway. So once you assign your, you created, let's say, a tier 0 gateway, give it to this cluster, we should see tunnels come up. And I already talked about that. Now, what happens when we start powering on VMs? Now, in order for me to do this, I got to actually change my environment over to a multi-TEP environment. And let me just show you how I'm going to do that, okay? And I'll probably let that run for a bit and then come back, okay? So let's go into here. First of all, I'm going to power off some VMs. I can do it when the VMs are off, but I'm just going to power them off. This is the rude way of powering it off. Don't do it in production. You should shut down. I'm just doing this to speed things up for the recording. There we go. I got no VMs powered on. That was the bad way of powering off. Don't do that in production, okay? Let me go to my... So now let's go back into my system profiles. Remember I showed you the edge profile, my edge profile, and I have multi-TEP. I also have 2 profiles here. One called Steve's single tap host profile. And if I actually go in and just edit that one, you'll see, again, I'm not doing lags, but I'm doing teaming over here. This is the C says teaming, default teaming. That's for your taps. It says failover order. Uplink 1 is active, uplink 2 is standby. That's why I only had a single tap on those hosts. Now I'm going to assign this multi-tap profile to it. Let's edit it, and you'll see, again, I did load balance based on source port, okay? And both uplinks are active. So now I'll get 2 taps per host. So how do I do this? There's a couple of ways to do this. If I go to my hosts over here, if I go to my compute cluster, you'll see it says applied profile, the ESXi profile. Notice I created a profile for a single tap. I actually have a profile there which I used for my multi-tap, okay? Watch my video on preparing your transport nodes on creating host profiles, okay? So anyways, so I'm going to pick that profile with the multi-tap, and I'm going to go save, all right? And at that point, it's going to, you'll see it's reconfiguring. It should give these hosts another couple of taps. This may take a few minutes to do this. I would schedule a maintenance window if I was going to do this in the real world, okay? Because you're more than likely going to drop some packets and lose some connectivity. So I would schedule a maintenance window for me to do this. It doesn't take long, but hey, you never know if something happens. So we'll let that run. I'll probably let it run for about 5 minutes, okay? It should be much less than that, but I'm just going to let things settle down, okay? Then we'll come back. Okay, so I let a little bit of time go by. Actually, it's the next day for me. I had stuff to do. Anyway, so this thing's, it's finished. It's finished configuring. If I look over my 3 hosts, hosts 4, 5, and 6, you'll see tap IP addresses. If I click on this, you'll see each host will actually have 2 taps. Host 4 has 11.52 and 11.54. Host 6 has 11.53 and 11.55. And then host 5 has 11.51 and 11.56. Again, it's pulling it from a tap pool I created way back when. Anyways, so you'll notice we got no tunnels. No tunnels are up. I got no VMs powered on. Okay. So if we look at our edge nodes, go back to edge node, we got 4 tunnels. Remember, I've got 2 taps there. So this is what we expect to see. So let's go back to here, and let's go back to my PowerPoint, and let's see what we see, okay? So this is what we look like right now. We got multiple taps. Oops. Got multiple taps, okay? I got no VMs powered on, and I've got my edge cluster set up. There's a tier 0 gateway using the edge cluster. So because of that, again, I basically, each tap here, again, has 4, each edge node has 4 tunnels. 1, 2, 3, 4. And that would be the same for the second, anyways, which we see. So let's power on a VM. So when we power on a VM, what should we expect to see? So if I power on a VM on this host here, this tap needs to reach out to the taps on the edge nodes in this cluster. So in this case, you'll see I got 4 tunnels here. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's what I should expect to see. All right. Each edge node, if I look at the edge node, each edge node had 4 tunnels. But now I powered this one on, and it's going to basically see this tap twice on both of its taps. So this each should now have 6. So let's go back and take a look. Let's power on a VM. And again, downloading patch definition. I don't care what VM I power on. It makes no difference. As long as it's on an overlay segment, that's the main thing. And I'll put it on, we'll put it on number 4, right? Yeah, let's put it on number 4 here. And we'll say OK. All right. And I'm going to pause this. This will take probably about a minute or so to update itself. Okay, so we're back. And you can see host 4 has 4 tunnels. If I click on that, it's basically, again, host 4 is the dot 54 here. And again, it's going to the edge nodes. Those are the IPs of the different TEPs in the edge nodes. The 181 and 191 is edge 1. The 182 and the 192 is edge 2. Now, hang on a second. How come I'm only using one TEP? Let's go back to my little drawing here. Let's go back to the iPad. Remember, when I did my uplink profile, I said, okay, I'm going to have 2 uplinks, which I do, uplink 1 and uplink 2. And I'm going to do load balancing based on source. There's 2 choices, source port, which is the default, it just says source, and another one was source MAC. So what that means is I did the source port. What that means is, okay, when I power on a VM, whatever port that VM is plugged into will be pinned to a TEP. So this VM here is pinned to that first TEP. Okay, that's the idea. So that's why we only see this one, and this one doesn't get involved. If I powered on another VM, which we'll talk about, things will get a bit different, which we'll see. So let's power on another VM on, let's say, host 2 over here. What should we see? Again, when I power on that VM, this TEP needs to talk to all the TEPs on the edge nodes, 1, 2, 3, 4. So I expect to see 4. This TEP also needs to talk to this original TEP over here. Okay, so now we should see 5 tunnels here, 5 tunnels here, and 2 more. There should be 8 on each edge node. Now, so I could do that right now. What I'm going to do, let's save a step here, right? Let's power on another VM on this host. And when we do that, same thing. This TEP needs to talk to all the edge TEPs, okay? And this one also needs to talk to all those as well, okay? So when I look at this, basically I'll have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 tunnels on each node here. And again, this edges will basically have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10, something like that. Okay, let's power them on and let's see what happens. Okay, so let's go back to here, and again, that'll take, let me power on, I did it on host 4, let me power on whatever database, power it on, we'll do it on host 6, sounds good to me. Let's power on web 1, and let's power it on host 5, I think that's the next one, I'll go host 5. Say okay. So now all hosts should have one. Let's just make sure. Click on host 4. If I go to VMs, I've got an app VM powered on it. Let's go to web 1. Okay, host 5's got web 1, and host 6 has this database one. By the way, you'll see these cluster service VMs. Why aren't those in the equation? They're not hooked up to NSX segments, so you can just ignore those. Okay. So if we go back to NSX over here. If I hit the refresh, I find this takes about a minute or 2 for it to update. So I'm just going to pause this. Hey, by the way, while we're waiting, hit that subscribe button. And hey, hit that like if you found this useful or entertaining. Hit that like button and subscribe if you haven't already subscribed to the channel. So let's pause the recording. We'll come right back and see what we see. Okay, so we're back and we actually see I've got my 6 tunnels on each of my hosts. If I go to my edges, I have 10. And that goes back to what I mentioned in here. I would actually have 6. Again, if we just review this TEP, this VM is using that TEP, this VM is using that TEP, this VM is using that TEP. So this TEP needs to talk to the edges, 1, 2, 3, 4. Needs to talk to this TEP, that's 5. Needs to talk to that, that's 6. And I will just repeat that on the 3 hosts. So that's why I got 6 there. The edge now, the edge TEPs need to talk to, again, the edge TEP. So this guy would talk to, there's 1, 2, 3, 4. This guy would need to talk to 5, 6, 7, 8. Am I messed up here? 9 and 10. Yeah, let's do that over again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. That's better. Even this simple drawing, it gets can get confusing. So again, 6, 6, and 6, which I should see, and 10 over here, which I should see. Now, what happens if I power on more VMs? So this is where it's going to get funny. So right now, we have 6 connections, 6 connections, 6 connections, and 10 and 10. If I power on more VMs, let's say I power on the second VM, we're going to assume that it's going to connect to that tap. And then again, this guy will connect to that one, and this guy will connect to this one. Again, each of these taps would have to connect to the edges. Each tap would have to connect to the other taps as well. So you see where my picture got really crazy here. So I had 6 before. I should actually have 12, 12, 12, and I can't even remember how many on this one. This would be, well, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 12, and the 4 that we had, we should have 16 in total per edge. Let's see what happens. Now, this is the part where things may not happen the way that I'm whiteboarding it here, okay? And there's a reason for that. And let's see if we notice it, okay? Let me go back into here. Let me go in and power on some more VMs. So let me power on, let's power on database. Let's go power on, and let's put it on whatever, host 6. Let's power on web 2. Let's put it on host 5. That sounds good. Let's power on test. And let's put that on host 4. That sounds good. So each should have 2 VMs. So I've got app and test there, whatever. I've got web and web, okay. And then I've got database and test. All right. So I got to let this settle down for a bit. So I'm going to pause this and come back. Like I said, it usually takes about a few minutes. I find that this part of the interface refreshes pretty quickly. I don't know if this is my environment. So you see how that number just went to 12, right? This one just went to 12. Pretty quick. I find the other screen here, it takes a couple minutes for it to refresh. Again, I don't know if that's my environment or not. But anyways, if I keep hitting refresh, I just walk away for about 5 minutes and I come back, right? So let's see what we got here, if this thing is updated anymore. We still see 12, 12. I said 16, so let's see what happens, okay? We got to let it kind of gurgle for a bit. So I'll pause the recording, and we'll be right back. Okay, so we're back. I let about 5 minutes pass, and I hit my refresh over here. And you see it's not as many tunnels as I said. This one, host 4, looks good. It got 12 tunnels. This one's got 7, and this one's got 7. What's going on? If I look at my edge nodes here, I said there should be 16. I only have 12. It seems like some of my TEPs are not being registered. Remember, if we go back to here, what's happened is the teaming policy I'm using is based on load balance based on source port. So this VM should register on this one, and this VM should register on that. That's sort of how it's supposed to work. It is quite possible that this VM could register to that TEP, okay? And therefore this one does not get registered, therefore no tunnels. So how do we figure that out? So let me actually go back to my lab environment. Let me just kill that. Oops, sorry, let me share my screen here. So let's share my screen. Let's see what's going on. Now, you probably won't run into this in production. You're probably going to have more than 2 VMs or 1 VM running on a host, to be honest with you. But just in case, you're wondering about this, let me connect to my host 4. Host 4 was one of them that didn't. Let's go back to NSX, sorry. Let's go back to hosts, and let's look at host 4. Host 4 was the one that was good. Host 5 and 6 are the ones that are not really recording things. Let's go to, so let me putty into, that's host 4. Okay, I'll log in on host 4 as well. Why not? All right, yeah, let me show you on host 4. Then we'll look at what it's supposed to be because I can pretty much tell what it's going to be. So I've SSH into my host. I'm going to type in ESX top. Actually, before I do that, I'm going to type in ESX CFG-VMK-NIC-list. It's an old command, but anyways, it still works. This is going to list my VM kernel ports. I hit enter. You'll see I got VM kernel 10 and VM kernel 11. Those are my TEPs. How do I know that? It says over here the network stack is VXLAN on the far right. I know it says VXLAN. Should say Geneve, but doesn't really matter. So you'll see VM kernel 10 is 1152. VM kernel 11 is 1154. So there are my two TEPs. If you're wondering what VM kernel 50 is, that is for basically containers for networking. So let's ignore that. So it's these two TEPs, VM kernel 10 and 11. How do I know which VM is using which TEP? Okay, ESX top. I've had videos on this if you're not familiar with it. I'm going to hit N for networking view. And let me just scroll down a bit here. And in my networking view, you'll actually see VM kernel 10 is using VMNIC 2. VM kernel, where's VM kernel 11? VM kernel 11 is using VMNIC 3. Those are my physical NICs, VMNIC 2, VMNIC 3. Which, notice over here, here's my interface for my app VM. It's using VMNIC 3. And this one here's my test VM. It's using VMNIC 2. So I know one VM is using one TEP, the other VM is using the other TEP by looking at that picture. This is, remember I said host 4 is the one that looks good. Host 4 is looking good, right? Let me just hit refresh here to be on the safe side. Yeah, host 4 is looking good. Let's go to host 5 and see what's going on here. Let's go into site a-esxi-05.local and let's log in as root. And this is host 5 now. And I'm going to change the color of this just because I feel like it. So let's go to appearances, appearance, color, is what I want. Default background modify, we'll go with this, I guess. Apply, okay. So ESX CFG-VMK-NIC-L to list. There are my TEPs there, VM kernel 10 and 11, okay, 51 and 56, okay, whatever. Let's look at ESX top. I'm going to hit N, letter N for the networking view. And again, when we look here, this is the one of the hosts that wasn't reporting the proper number of tunnels. So I look here, I see Web 1 and Web 2. Web 1 and Web 2, notice they're both using VMNIC 3. So I got, and you will see VM kernel 10 is using VMNIC 2. VM kernel 11 is using VMNIC 3. So my two VMs here are only using a single TEP. The other TEP's not getting used. I guess that could happen, right? You know, it's based on source port, okay? So it could map to that one. So in order for me, again, it's not the end of the world, and I don't think you'll run into this in production. You're probably gonna have more VMs running than just two, right? So let's power on a couple more VMs on host 4. Let's power on, I don't know, test 2. Let's power that on host 4, and let's see what happens. Okay, and let's power on, yeah, okay, so let's see what happens. There we go. We're on, sorry, I did on host 4. I didn't want it on host 4. I wanted it on host 5. Let's power on the test 4. Let's power that on host 5. That's where I am, right? Host 5. Yeah, and let's let this screen refresh. Give it a few seconds. There's my other VM. Notice now that one went to VMNIC 2, and that's my other TEP. So host 5 now, if I give it a few seconds, or maybe a bit longer, it should update. If we go back into NSX, remember our edge nodes, I think our edge nodes said 12. Yeah, I said 12. If I refresh, this should probably jump up. Maybe we have to give it a few minutes longer or whatever. Anyways, let's power on some more VMs. Let me power on this one on. Power this on host 6. Sounds good. And let's check out host 6 as well, just to make sure both its TEPs are being used, right? Site a-esxi-06.vclass.local. Oops, made a typo there. Let's try that again. Site a-esxi-06.class.local. And we'll go in this root. And let me, again, change my background color just because you folks know I like doing that. Default background color, we'll change it to maybe something like that, I guess. That might not be the prettiest, but whatever. There we go. Let's look at, again, I get the same kind of, let's DSX CFG-VMK NIC-L. CFG-VMK NIC-L. There we go. There's my two taps. Okay. VM kernel 10 and 11. ESX top. And for the networking view. And I've got a couple of VMs running. Yeah, okay, so some of them are on VMNIC 2, some on VMNIC 3. So this should fix the issue. I should actually see more tunnels now. So let's just wait a bit and we'll come back. All right? All right, everybody. I let probably about 15 minutes pass by. I don't normally sit around for this stuff. I usually go and do something. So let's go and see what happened. So if I go into system here, if I go into fabric hosts, and I expand my compute cluster, I see I got 16 tunnels. Okay, that's what I expect to see. If I go to my nodes here, my NSX edges, again, I see 16 tunnels here as well. And again, if we go back and look at the, like I said, the iPad, let's go back to here. And that's what I expect to see. So this TEP over here talks to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. This one would do the same thing. So 8 and 8 is 16. And each one would, each of these hosts would have 16. Again, the edge now, same kind of thing with the edge. This one here talks to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And then we repeat the same thing for that tap, another 8, so that would be 16 per. That's what I expect to see. Now, let me just put something out there. Am I going to freak out if I see 14 or even back here when I was doing this with the, let's go back to this one here. Actually, no, let's not do that one. Let's go back to this guy here. When I did this, I showed you I just had the one VM there and I had the two. Sometimes I see both TEPs registering. I've seen that kind of happen before. I'm in a nested environment. I don't know if that's a hiccup from the nested environment or not. But generally speaking, if I see some more TEPs or more tunnels than I think there might be, I'm not going to freak out. If there's a couple tunnels less, again, I'm not really going to freak out. What I'm going to be concerned about is tunnels that are down. Those aren't good. Okay, but this gives you an idea of what you should expect to see. We've seen in my example when I turned on two VMs, there's a possibility that both VMs may go to a single TEP. Hey, it could happen, right? But again, if you probably got more than two VMs running on the host, right? So I don't think you're gonna run into that in production. But hey, it could potentially happen. I've seen it here, right? But if you got 40 VMs, I don't think that's gonna happen. All right. What would happen now? Let me introduce a problem and let's look at some tunnels that are down, and I'll kind of show you something simple can mess things up. All right. So I'm going to be right back. I'm going to break something and we're going to take a look at it. Okay, we're back. I introduced the problem just to show you a couple things here. I go to my compute cluster. You see there's a little mark here. It's showing me that's degraded. If I open this up, we'll see again a few things that are a little bit messed up. You see some is degraded, some is up. I haven't refreshed this really. This could take a little while to update, okay? I just kind of decided to show it to you kind of mid update. I'll refer to it, okay? So you see these two hosts here look like there's a problem. This one looks okay. There's still 16 tunnels, but is it, okay? Again, this is where that refresh button kind of kicks in. I notice on my environment it's a little slow. I'm going to look at my edge nodes. Notice my edge nodes, I got 4 tunnels up to 12 tunnels down. You see that? See the little red arrow pointing down. And if I click on this, you'll actually see my edge nodes, the source IP 181 has a connection to 182. That's edge 2. 181 is edge 1. And 191 has a connection to 182. Again, that's edge 1 to edge 2. 191 again has a connection to 192, and 181 has a connection. So my edge 1 over here on the left has connections to edge 2. See, if I look at this one, if I look at tunnels up, you actually see again this is my edge 2 in the left column. Then 82s and 92s. Remember, there's 2 TEPs each, and then it's connecting to the edge 1, the 81s and the 91s. So that's telling me my edge nodes are actually, or the tunnels are between my edge node. When I look at the down tunnels, I see edge 2 over here is not connecting to any of my transport nodes here, 51, 52, 53, 54. I see a lot of that. I find that this edge interface updates a lot faster. Let's go to hosts over here, right? And sometimes, again, I notice that, notice this one here now, it's showing there's more tunnels down. They're saying there's 8 up, 8 down. Like, what's going on here, right? So if we look at these down tunnels, 55 to 181, 53 to 181, again, it's showing me the source is, again, from this host. Remember, there's 2 TEPs on this host right now, and the remotes are the 181s, 192s. It looks like these hosts are not connecting to the edges. So the edges are connected to each other. The hosts are connecting to each other. You see the up, got 8 up. So again, this is like from one TEP to another type of thing on the various hosts. Now, I didn't write down the IPs, but this is kind of what I'm seeing here, right? So if I just go back to my iPad real quick, if I actually clear this, we can see that our host TEPs are all talking to each other. That seems to be okay, right? The edge TEPs are talking to each other. That seems to be okay. It looks like there's a break in between. So let's validate that. Let's validate that. Remember my edge TEPs. This is my edge 1. So it'll have an IP of 172.6. Let me get a better thing here. This one here will be 172.20.11. This is .81. This one is going to be .91. That's edge 1. This one will be .182. This one will be .192. I just did that so I can easily identify, oh, that's edge 1 TEP, that's an edge 2 TEP. All right. Again, these ones here will be like 50s or 60s or whatever the case may be. So let's go in and take a look at how we can figure that out. I'm going to go to one of my transfer nodes. I'll go to this one here. This is host 5. Okay, that's great. I'm just going to go quit. Now, what I want to do is notice my host 5. Here's my TEPs here, VM kernel 10 and VM kernel 11. And I want to ping my edge TEPs. So if I type in, I want to test this now with going through the Geneva overlay. I'll go VMK ping ++ net stack equals VXLAN. I'm telling it to use the VXLAN stack or the Geneva stack, okay? Or the NSX stack. That's basically what I'm telling it to do. So then I'm going to specify the IP address of one of the NSX edges. So I'll go 172.20.11.181, and it's not working. Okay. If I try 182, it's not going to work. If I try 191, it's not working. If I want to try 192, it's not working. Okay. I can even be specific about what VM kernel interface I want to do. Now notice I'm just testing for connectivity here. I'm not specifying the segment size or anything. Let me resolve the issue. Let me kind of show you what I did to break this. And there's a couple things that could break this, right? Now, what I did is I actually went into my profiles here. And this is my edge profile. I kind of showed you that earlier in the video. My edge is using this uplink profile, which I'm doing teaming, okay? Notice the VLAN over here is 1100. I've got both my host TEPs and my edge TEPs on the same VLAN. It should be VLAN 11. I typed in 1100 there, so obviously they're not going to talk to each other. And you've seen the information that I looked at, you actually see the tunnels. It was causing some problems. So let me go and edit that now. Let me scroll all the way down to where the VLAN is configured, and let me say 11 and say save. And then at that point, I just got to wait a few minutes to let everything catch up. Actually, I shouldn't have to do it over here. I should be able to ping this now. Boom, it's working. Now, I want to be more specific though, okay? That's just showing me, I got a shoestring, I could talk to it, right? That's not really doing a full test. I would do this. If I was testing my TEPs, I would just do a quick test on this. Can I talk to it? Yes, I can. Great. But now I want to be more specific. Maybe I want to do, let's go -S segment size. I'm using a 9,000 byte MTU, so I'm going to go 8972. You always subtract 28 because there's overhead for IP, and ICMP has a 28 byte overhead, so you subtract that. So if you got a 9,000 byte MTU, 9,000 minus 28 is 8972. And I'm going to say -D, don't fragment. So at that point, I know, oh, okay, it's testing it for that MTU size. If you don't believe me, let me put it one more, 8973. It says it's too long, so it's not going to work. All right. So now watch if I do without the -D. It works. How about this? Remember I said 73 failed? What's working now? It's because I didn't specify the -D. -D means do not fragment. Okay. So you always want to test. You know, if you're just testing quick connectivity, like I said, just do a quick test. Yes, it's getting there. Great. Check the MTU size. Okay. So make sure you can ping it with the MTU. I ran into an issue where I had my edges on one VLAN, and I had my host TEPs on another, and I could ping, no problems, but as soon as I specified the segment size of for testing for an MTU of 9,000, that's where things failed, and it turned out my router wasn't configured correctly. I made a mistake, and I thought it was set for jumbo frames, but it wasn't, so I had to fix it. So this is very important, so make sure you specify don't fragment. See, it fails there, okay? Now, another thing you could do also, and we'll be wrapping things up, is maybe, so right now I'm telling it to use the Geneve, sorry, the NSX IP stack, right? Maybe I want to be more specific. Maybe I want to do something like this, E6 CFG, sorry, NSX CFG -VMK NIC -list, and maybe I want to test it from VM kernel 10. And maybe I want to test it just from VM kernel 11. Right now, which one's it using? I don't know, right? But I want to be specific. Let me test from both, right? So let me go in, and I'm going to specify -I for interface VMK10. I'm going to hit enter. Oops, it says message too long. Yeah, let's get rid of that 3 and put a 2 in there. There we go. So I'm actually now telling it, use VM kernel 10. So I know it's talk now. How about this? If I want to do VM kernel 11, I do that. Okay. So I guess that's pretty much it for the most part. What I would have to say, if you notice tunnels are down, tunnels up is good. Tunnels being down, that could be a bad thing. Remember, test for connectivity. Do this. Right? Just see if you got connectivity, then check for your jumbo frames, that sort of thing, and then you can be specific about what interface you want to use. Configuration, misconfiguration is usually the number one thing. In my pictures here, I had, remember, the overlay transport zone. These hosts and these edges have to be in that same overlay transport zone. I've seen people make a mistake, put them in two different ones, then the tunnels don't come up. Same kind of thing as me doing my the VLAN on my uplink profile. But that's basically it. I hope you found this beneficial. More videos to come. I apologize for taking so long. I've been really, really busy. Again, please, if you found this interesting, hit that thumbs up. Also, if you haven't subscribed to the channel by now, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button, okay? And leave comments and questions down below. And anything you want to see, make some comments down below. I'll see what I can do. Thanks again. Have a great day. Bye now.